Hola y bienvenidos al Palante Nonprofits Podcast. Soy su host, Dr. Andrea Ortega, trabajando con organizaciones sin fines de lucro en Estados Unidos. I'm so excited to highlight our nonprofit leaders, change makers, and other philanthropists in our sector. Bienvenidos. Welcome to the Palante Nonprofits Podcast. I'm Dr. Andrea Ortega, and in a world where truth, justice, and community care are under attack, especially for mi comunidad right now, from political retaliation to government shutdowns that we just, had this past year, and nonprofits are doing the work that they've always done. And I'm so excited here to have Representative Dr. Eskamani, who actually started her journey, I think, in the nonprofit sector and, has always shared her work with places like Planned Parenthood, how that shaped her. Now she has a whole PhD, a whole seat in the House of Representatives for Florida, and is an active public servant who has really fought for equity and accountability in Florida and beyond. We'll talk about what it means to lead in this climate, and I'm so excited to have you. I've been saving this story for this podcast, and I promise I'll let you speak. But and I want to share with you how special you are to me, because I have always had this vision of politicians, just being people who lie, who are very, I think, growing up, you see that mold, especially in movies and shows. And then you actually meet them and they're not the people you think they are. But you have really shown me and opened my heart to that there are really good people out there trying to make change. And I want to say this story because I want people to know that you are genuinely that person, even when no cameras are doing. But you had just been, I think, elected, and we were walking back from our PhD class to the parking lot. And I remember I went through postpartum, which I do openly share, and I had just given birth to, I think, my second child. I was pregnant all of my PhD program. So I remember being like, man, I wish I could be like you or do the things you do, because you're so amazing and you are really, shaping and doing these great things. And I remember you looked at me and you said, Andrea, you have the most important job, which is to raise two beautiful girls and the future generation of this. And I remember feeling so seen by, one, someone like you, but two, for you to just be like, not real, your job is just as hard, it's just different. Like, that stays with me a long time. And since that day, I was like, man, this is someone I want to see go high. This is someone I will support as long as I can. And I'm so excited for you to be the future mayor of the city of Orlando.
Oh my God. And I mean every word of it. I mean, it's we do not compensate caregivers and moms for the sacrifices that are made. And that's a whole other podcast episode. But my God, it's truly remarkable what you've been able to do. And what listeners might not know is that we both finished our PhD at the same time. And so it was such a joy to have that full circle with you of being together in the beginning and then going through all these different changes in our lives and then still get to that finish point, albeit, a different finish timeline than what I expected when I first started. I'm sure the same for you. Incredible that we got to do it together.
Yeah, I definitely did not think that was going to take 7 years.
Girl, I didn't think I was going to finish.
You know what? You're right. All of the above. And so I'm going to start with my first question, Dr. Eskamani. But you've been both a policymaker and a nonprofit professional. When systems are failing, and we know that the nonprofit sector was literally created to help with the gaps, that the government has in serving its people. But what do you see our most important role, to navigate everything going on?
Yeah, that's such a great question. My first thought is that we need more nonprofit professionals to run for office, period. There's just such a huge need for it. And when it comes to understanding how budgets work, understanding broken systems, understanding how to do a lot with not a lot. I mean, that's the experience of government every day. And nonprofit professionals have the skills to approach those types of challenges every single day. And so I do think when we can get more nonprofit professionals into public office, you're going to see systems improve. You're going to see evaluations of policy and programs and a better understanding of what was the actual goal of this policy and are we hitting that goal? And so that's very important. We'll be remiss if I didn't say that you should run for office one day and your listeners should too. Even if it's scary, even if it doesn't feel the right time today, just think about that in the future, because the nonprofit skill sets translate very well to public service because you are public servants, right? Every single day. Now, to kind of dive deeper into this moment of time, like where we are today. It is a very unprecedented and uncertain environment. And as you noted in the introduction, especially for nonprofits, and we're seeing funding being pulled back dramatically from different levels of government, while the need increases exponentially. And so if you're not engaged with your local government, this is the time to do it. And you might be asking, what does that actually mean? And I want to take the elevator down to explore this more. But what I'll just start off with saying is if you don't know who your county commissioner is, or your city council person, or your school board member, or your state representative, take some time to find out. A lot of folks will say, hey, Anna, how's DC going? And I'm like, oh, I don't go to Congress. I'm your state representative. I go to Tallahassee, right? Or folks might say, they'll ask me about some DC drama and want my opinion on it. I'm just like, oh, I have opinions, but I'm actually your state representative. So there's a huge knowledge gap, like when it comes to the levels of government and what each layer is responsible for. And so take some time to understand that, because then you can get a better grasp of, if I am requesting funding, what level of government would I go to? But also, if my constituents, the people that I serve in my organization, let's just say they're experiencing disenrollment with Medicaid, or food insecurity, or homelessness, you need to know what level of government can have the most impact. So your service delivery work can also evolve to service mobilization, can evolve to service advocacy, so that you can actually at a macro level, right, change the environment to better serve your constituents. At the end of the day, it's nonprofit, our goal would always be to reevaluate our mission because we've accomplished our mission, right? But you can't accomplish the mission unless the system around you changes. And that requires you to get involved in the advocacy space.
Oh my God, my eyes opened up when you said service delivery and the way that you also fund that, because I think I work with a lot of nonprofits who don't understand, one, fully their impact and how much it costs to do the impact they make, and how
Oh,
they
for sure.
should absolutely charge and find funding revenues that will back that model. And so thanks so much for addressing that. My next question, I think, you've done a lot of great work. I love that whenever you answer something, you bring it back to the fact that you started in the nonprofit sector, and really for one of the most controversial nonprofits that could potentially exist.
I know, it's so true.
And look, there was a time when I didn't have health insurance and I had to go to Planned Parenthood and they offered services. It's so much deeper than, healthcare is so much deeper than being pro-life or pro-choice. The reality is that it's always, at the end of the day, an attack on women. But this question has nothing to do with that, because that's another podcast. This question is, how do you personally stay grounded when your values and sometimes your work are being political targets? And I do believe I asked you this in another moment, and you don't have to answer the same, but I remember you kind of just sharing that, you stick to what you have and you don't let the noise take over, and you don't let that, because I've seen your Instagram. I get anxiety from your Instagram comments, like
Oh my
I've
God.
seen your emails, I've seen everything. Like, how do you manage to stay grounded when
Yeah.
everybody's attacking it?
Well, this is a question that I think a lot of women of color in public facing spaces are asking themselves every day, because obviously being elected official, you are much more exposed. There is a lot of misogyny and xenophobia and racism that I experience every single day. But I know that's a shared experience by a lot of women who take a position or make a point on any topic. And so my first thought, right, is you do have to practice both grit and grace. Grit towards those around you, right? And grace towards yourself, to really ensure that you're being kind and gentle with who you are, but also, tough in the sense of what I care about and what I stand for. And I have found, honestly, more unexpected allies when you are just your authentic self versus when you do try to hide. And you mentioned Planned Parenthood, so I want to share a very quick story of just when I worked at Planned Parenthood, so I started very entry level at my local Planned Parenthood affiliate. I rose in the ranks in the volunteer management, fundraising, advocacy, communications silo. Like those kind of, that kind of became my job description of those 4 kind of areas over time. We had a merger in 2015, so we expanded from 4 counties to 22. I was traveling all across the state, managing a team of 6 with 11 health centers and 1,000 patients. And sometimes I would find myself having to travel to conferences or other locations and get into an Uber, get into a cab. Folks would always ask me, what do I do? And I had to make a split decision of was I going to tell them I worked at Planned Parenthood, or would I just keep it generic and say, oh, I work in women's health care, and just not, go into the political dynamics. And I, every time in that split second moment, would just stick to Planned Parenthood because I wanted to see what the reaction was, right? But I also wanted to be open to a conversation to help this person understand that whatever their perspective was, if it was, one that was negative, that maybe I could offer an alternative viewpoint and just kind of like sit in the discomfort of a conversation, but really not get argumentative, right? Like lead with wonder versus automatically assume they were giving a disagreement. And another complimentary example actually happened this week. I was at an event. It was an interfaith event hosted by the Turkish community in Central Florida. And because it was interfaith, there were a lot of different leaders in the space, including members from multiple denominations. So after the presentation, I was just sitting and talking to folks at my table, and this man who's a pastor at a local church sits with me. I mean, candidly, he was an older white man, and so you kind of think, okay, this guy's gonna have some opinions and might not be aligned with mine, but that's fine. And I have to tell you, Dr. Ortega, I was just blown away by this man's kindness, his questions, and also his compassion for immigrants. Like he started the conversation on immigration with me, and we were 100% aligned. He wants to do more through his church to help those impacted communities. He literally asked me, what can I do to be of support? And I since then exchanged phone numbers with him. We're texting each other. And I'm just like, can I join this man's church? Like, oh my God, right? Like just an incredible soul. And so it's also a reminder too, when you're doing this type of work of, one, lead with love, lead with wonder, like don't make assumptions about others. 2, be your authentic self and don't shrink in those moments, right? And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised by the type of relationships and conversations you can build if you follow that mantra, if you are yourself. And again, just ask open-ended questions. And also, I believe in the power of evolution for humans in the sense that, like, I believe that people can change, but you have to give them space to change. And if you automatically, like, assume worse intentions or automatically get into an argument or you write someone off because of something they said or something they posted, and you're not willing to kind of tap into that sticky situation, then a public job is not the right job for you. Because I do think that this type of work almost requires us to operate in that way, especially in these really combative political times. Now, with that said, I don't want to give off the impression that, you don't hold people accountable. Like, I'm a firm believer of calling someone in before I call them out, but I will call you out. And so I do think there's a balancing act around that, and also understanding who deserves your vulnerability versus those who have already abused it. But I do think one of my mantras is to just treat people with kindness, lead with wonder. And that has allowed me to rise above the rhetoric. And obviously humor is also a really great friend in this. And so I am not afraid to like screenshot some absurd comment or email as you've seen me do and just kind of like, this guy's making fun of himself. I'll just help him do that, right? So I think you have to be brave enough to do that too once in a while. But at the end of the day, just don't let anyone take your shine. Just be yourself.
Oh my God, so many good. I know. And first of all, I love that you say that you rather, your first step is to bring them in rather than call them out, because that is so powerful. I've always been known as a very strong character. I don't really know what that means, but
We love it.
literally this year, well, especially as a Latina, right? We're loud, we're bossy, or whatever it is. This year, I've been going to therapy, and one of the things I love about my therapist is I kind of tell her what I want to work on. And literally, one of those things is like, I want to make a bigger impact than rage posts on Instagram. How do I, or immediately again, to her point, it's like you can't be an extremist. I'm definitely an extremist. I'm either super passionate about something or I'm just not in it.
Oh
And
my God, I
so,
love it.
but like one of those things was that, like, how do I, instead of shut people out, like, how do I, how do I get into these deeper conversations? And she said, ask the uncomfortable questions. We're
Yeah,
so used to just saying, how
yeah,
are you doing? And expect, I'm okay, or I'm doing good. When in reality, the question is not, how are you doing? It's like, what are you feeling today? How can I support you? Or
yes.
like,
Oh,
and like just deeper questions. And like, Andrea, if you don't understand why someone is something that you don't believe in, like to your point, it's like, why is that? Why do you, because I feel like people are not necessarily born left or right. We created that through media and the political parties or all of it, but like,
absolutely, absolutely.
like ask the questions, like what got you to there, like how, was it, and then you realize that it's probably their upbringing, the way
Totally.
that so many things, and maybe they've never been exposed to, I tell people I don't consider myself religious anymore, even though I was raised Catholic, but it's something that's also a big part of my culture. It's a big
Absolutely.
part. Like Colombians are like 90% or something Catholic. And I've had to deal with that right now because it's like, how do I navigate that culture part? But I'm not religious, but I still want to
Yeah,
celebrate Niño Jesus, especially now that the holidays are coming up.
totally,
Um,
totally.
and it's asking deeper questions to everybody to like, why do you believe? Why do you celebrate the Novena? Or why do you do, and like, it helps so much. And I love that you said open-ended questions because you do not need to have the answers and you do not need to try to make people listen or believe you in one conversation.
Yes, exactly.
Yes,
Like,
yes,
when was that ever possible? You know what I mean?
yeah.
I just think back to like growing up and having conversations with your peers. It never was just like one, 10-second bumper sticker that persuaded someone to agree with you, right? Like it took time to
Mm-hmm,
build trust and
mm-hmm.
debate an issue and find a solution together. It's so ironic because I feel like social media, obviously, it's a major connector, but sometimes I feel even less connected to people because of it, you know?
Yeah, and I put myself in we have a 6 and a 7-year-old who are always asking questions, and it's like, but you know what? What if as adults we did that? What if we asked
Yeah.
questions? What if we asked the questions? Like, they're so blunt to be like, I'll be like at a park and they'll be like, why is that girl so tall? And I'll be like, because she eats her vegetables. But like, really, why? Like if we are curious too, like when do we lose that moment to be curious and allow other people to share with us what they know? And if they don't, like absolutely hold them accountable and share from one more thing, and I'll share and we'll move on to the last question is I've really been learning to speak from I. That helps bring a more stronger connection when sharing why maybe I believe the things I believe, and that's been really helpful for me. So I really appreciate everything that you had to share. I want to make sure that I'm respectful of your time, Dr. Eskamani, but you dissertation focus on crisis communication and community response. Based on your research or what you know, especially, being a public servant the last couple of years, how can nonprofits show up online and offline? I recently there's been a lot in North Carolina. I've seen rapid response groups to help with immigration and helping protect ICE going to schools, and all of these. And I'd love to know from your experience, especially with communication, like how can nonprofits show up for
Yeah.
our
It's
community?
a it's a really, really great question. And interesting enough, my main data set on my dissertation actually was Reddit. And so to give folks some more context, I focused my dissertation on crisis communications in the context of Florida's unemployment system. So I really honed in on economic disparities and in this case, Floridians during COVID-19 not receiving the unemployment benefits that were theirs and then turning to informal networks for assistance. And I focus on this topic partly because of my own personal and professional experience in this silo where we helped 60,000 Floridians with their unemployment claims during this time. And a lot of these folks found me through informal networks. It wasn't like the state of Florida told folks, contact Rep. Eskamani. It was because my email got posted on social media or it was word of mouth, or I did one TV interview and the interview resulted in, folks watching it and contacting us. And so I was really interested in just the flow of information and the travel of that information. But to the heart of your question, one of my research questions was like, what can government do about it? Like, how do you better show up in these places to really maintain access? In some cases, an informal network is not a bad thing for you. It can be a strength if you're present in that network to combat misinformation and to connect people to the right resources. So a few thoughts to that, right? One is obviously for something like the unemployment system, it's very complicated. And so it's really important to try to provide avenues for clarity as much as you can. In the context of immigration, I would say that takes shape in making sure everyone knows what their rights are, who their legal aid opportunities and options are, who do they call in crisis. Like that information should be provided in multiple languages proactively and shared as often as possible. I'm always surprised by how many allies don't know this information. Like their first time contacts me will be in the middle of a crisis, even though that we've done what we can always do more to make this information available. A lot of cases, folks don't reach out until they're already in the crisis. So what can we do as allies and nonprofits to get information out proactively so that people can prevent the crisis as much as possible versus find themselves in it? But step two, I would say, is once you have like clarity of of what information people need to know, whether that's a landing page on your website or a one pager you develop, what have you, showing up where folks are online is really important. And you can have an intern or two track conversations online, whether it's giving them specific platforms to follow or key terms to search. I'm always impressed by just the followers that we have who will flag something for me on Reddit or flag it for me on Instagram. I mean, yesterday, for example, I got an email because something happened with bat conservation in Gainesville, and it was posted on Instagram. I had not seen any reporting on this very niche issue, but it's so important. And the organization who made the news update on their platform was upset by FWC, says they didn't do their job. So that's my responsibility, right, as a state lawmaker, to follow up. And so now that I saw that, I was able to contact FWC, work to get an answer, and we'll go from there. But I think it's also to encourage your followers and encourage your clients and encourage those that you work with to be proactive in flagging things for you as well. And the last point I'll make is share what updates, what support, what content you have on those platforms proactively. If there is a subreddit on immigration or maybe immigration resources for your city, keep it updated. Share updates as you have them, share information as you have them, help fact check things. I mean, misinformation is rampant online. And what I really try to steer away from is like creating more panic. People are already really panicked. And what's worse is when someone who is 100% operating in good faith, but reports the wrong information. We've had this happen before where someone says ICE is outside the school, and then we all rush to that school and there is no ICE, right? But they saw maybe someone that they thought was ICE, and it just creates a lot of unnecessary panic for folks who are already really panicked. And trust and verify as much as you can. And I think nonprofits can play a big role in that, to ring the alarm bells proactively, but to make sure that what you're raising alarm for has been verified.
I love that. And I had the chance to work with a lot of Hispanic-led nonprofits, and I love one of their main methods of communication is WhatsApp. And I constantly work with them to be like, put that in your grant.
Yes.
Tell them that gather the data of how many people are in your WhatsApp community, how engaged that
100%.
text it is. That is gold. And they're like, if you have a way to communicate with the community that works, like that, you do not need to like say how many website visitors. No, how much messages does your WhatsApp community get? How active is it? How responsive you can, do that. That is gold for what separates you from an organization. And I literally have to teach on that a lot.
Well, and I'm so glad you're doing that because it might feel like almost like a passive thing or just like a default thing to do, but not every nonprofit is doing that. Like that is a 24/7 service you're now providing, and like that needs to be highlighted and included in your grant request. And I mean, I can't tell you the number of text threads that I'm in that are all like rapid response oriented. And obviously, be mindful of like one of the challenges I think in this ecosystem that at least I see in my spaces is the hyper awareness of safety security to the point where a lot of folks online are not operating with their actual identities. And so just be mindful of like who you are talking to, like from a risk assessment perspective, because it can be hard to know. Like I'm in some text threads where I don't know all the numbers at all. And I'll just be mindful when you're engaging in those spaces. It's really important to have your RQM prioritized, your risk quality management, especially in this ecosystem where, for example, a lot of nonprofits are hesitant to get involved in advocacy because they are worried about losing their C3 status. So understand like what you can and can't do in those spaces, and just be mindful that if you are communicating to a larger audience, that you got to make sure if you are on that line that you're speaking to an attorney and a compliance officer. So just be mindful of that too, because unfortunately this is an ecosystem where a lot of organizations who are doing this important work also are under the microscope. And so really want to emphasize the importance of protecting yourself and your organization at the same time.
Yeah, I've had many organizations who are still serving in our community, but maybe changing the language. And I work with a lot of those organizations, and I love everything that you said. You heard it from Dr. Eskamani, not me, but I didn't even think like you have a 24/7 hotline, really. If you have rapid response and a WhatsApp, very active group. So I love
Oh, yeah.
that. I think it's really important to highlight, because as a comunidad, like we do have a lot. I always share, like, don't call a meeting in a classroom, have a carne asada and share information. Bring the empanadas and bring people together. And those are all like important ways where you can gather attendance and put that as your data metrics. In terms of privacy, yeah, I think our community actually lacks a lot of infrastructure on privacy and word of mouth. And I try to work my hardest with my Hispanic-led nonprofits to do that. But I'm really glad that you brought it up. I did not pay her to say that. All right. Actually, I'm gonna call it a wrap. Representative Dr. Ana Eskamani, I want to thank you for your time. I have been looking forward to getting the chance to talk to you. And really, I was hoping to really tell people more about you, share about your work, that you are running for City of Mayor of Orlando, that you will become Madam Mayor of Orlando and beyond. I'm so excited where you continue to take that as a woman of color, as a student. Gosh, to your point, like, being qualified to hold office. um, and, if you're leading a nonprofit right now, take this as a reminder that you're a part of the legacy of resistance and care. There are ways to do that while protecting your mission, your Fund C3, and I can definitely help with that. But for more about Representative Dr. Ana Eskamani's journey, please visit her at anafororlando.com. She's very active on Instagram. I love her Friday updates. I hope you continue to do that even when you do go to DC, girl, because you keep it real. I love that. I love that. I love that. And I think you've built, because people tune in and I've seen them on the comments asking questions and all of that. I think you will always have that channel to speak from yourself rather than from what reporters or media might lean into saying. So thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to add to us? Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Yes. Awesome. Thank you so much. Don't forget to subscribe as well as like this on all of our social media. You can find us on Instagram at Palante Nonprofits and on our website at www.palantenonprofits.com. Gracias.